We'll see how this goes. This is my own Zoom that I got, so we'll see how it works. Wow. Okay, cool. So we got Ben. Hey Ben. Hey
Yeah, what's up,
Peter.
guys?
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So I'm
We
enjoying a quarantine IPA, is what I called it.
Yeah, nice. I should crack. I don't have any homebrew right now, so I'm gonna have to drink a
Well,
Kickstep
that's
IPA.
a good beer. So
Yeah. So and then it looks like we got Stuart. Stuart, did you make it
Hey,
back from they didn't quarantine you in Finland?
yeah,
You made it back, huh?
yeah, that was a crazy trip. Yeah, it was like a Jason Bourne movie or something at the end.
Because when you were
It
going
got a
over
little
there,
crazy.
didn't they say that like well I guess if you're from like the U.S. they still would let you come back from EMEA locations, but I know they were kind of shutting that stuff down. So I don't know if Canada like going into Vancouver was any
Yeah,
different.
yeah, it was like the day after we got there. It was yeah, pretty much the word was get home, leave. And then we couldn't get flights. Like we tried, we were calling like everybody else, the airlines, and they were all booked up, and we thought we had like a week, and then our towards the end our flights were starting to get canceled, so it was a little bit of a mad rush to get
So did
out.
you or
But
did I get that right? You said that you got there and then you had to go directly back. Is that what you're saying?
well, we pretty much made arrangements to come back
Okay,
right after
gotcha.
we got there,
Right.
but we couldn't leave right away, so we probably had, I don't know, five kind of stressful days of being there. And yeah, yeah, it
Wow.
was it was
Kind of
it was a bit
surprised
of
you
a
went in
trip.
the
I
first
probably
place.
wouldn't do that again. What's that?
Kind of surprised you went in the first place.
Yeah, I think it still seemed Finland was where we were, and we thought that was so far out of the way that it'd be an issue, but then it became kind of a worldwide thing. So
It seemed like
yeah,
every
so we're
every
happy at home. We're
day.
in quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, you're not leaving the island, right? You're like hunkered
That's
down on your island.
that's
No,
right. The
nope.
keister is still filled with beer, so
Oh,
everything is
good.
good. Yeah.
Nice. Good. Nice. Awesome. Um, I wrote down a bunch of notes about topics of conversation, so I guess we can kind of maybe go through those items. I was yesterday morning. I was like, I'm gonna create like this awesome like PowerPoint about like the interaction of like enzymes and mashes, and then I was like, no, no, I'm not gonna do that because my kids are like screaming at me to bounce on the trampoline with them, right? So, um, but I did want to talk about since we hadn't had a meeting for a while, and I know there was some stuff we'll talk about later about um, you know our fearless leaders and whatnot. But we haven't really been having meetings, and in my conversations with multiple people, there was a sense that maybe having monthly meetings was not really there wasn't a lot of participation, right? So um, I don't know. My thought was if it was a more of a bi-monthly or quarterly. Now, right now, it seems like a monthly meeting sounds good, right? Just to get to talk to other people. But I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about like the frequency of meetings, and what do you think works best? Like, do you think monthly meetings is too much, or too, or just right?
I think right now it's probably a good idea. And if you
Yeah,
need to move it later, you could.
yeah. My thing was the reason I really mentioned that is because I was driving down to Ghost Fish, and then like there'd be like zero or one person show up, right?
Mm.
So I don't want to have to drive. I mean, I like going down there, right? But I don't want to have to do the whole drive back and forth and all that kind of stuff on a Sunday with my kids. Like, so it's there wasn't a lot of in-person participation, I guess, at some of those meetings at Ghost Fish, right? So, but maybe if they're just done virtually, then that's fine.
I think quarterly overall, once everything clears up, is pretty good because there's a lot of interaction on the website as far as people getting help from the group. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of good topics covered online. And then, maybe once a quarter you can go over the top 10, questions people had or subjects anyways.
Yeah, that's a great idea. The other thing that's like the thing about Facebook that's tough is like there's a lot of great information out there, but
Oh, good.
it gets buried like really quickly, right? So you find you're like, oh, what was this thread where JP and Jason had written up their thoughts on Ondia Pro and all this stuff, and then I'm digging through that and like, oh, someone mentioned like what mash regime they did, and it's hard to kind of track that stuff down on Facebook for sure. Oh, who do we have? Is that a Bob?
It's like Bob's on.
Hey, Bob.
What's up?
How's it
How's it
going?
going? Wait, should I go landscape? Is everybody landscape or should I be in portrait?
I don't know.
Always portrait.
I don't know. It
You
kind
can't-
of matches your haircut being long and tall like that. So you should rock with it.
It fits my whole face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. It was funny. I was chatting with a friend earlier in the week. He's like, always portrait mode, bro. And I was like, oh, but you can see both my wife and me this way. He's like, I don't care. For you too. Well, if Dominique joins, I'll turn it landscape then.
Here we go.
All right. So then the other thing was like, this meeting I didn't really have like a lot of locked in topics, but for the next meetings, I know that there's a lot of the subjects have been kind of touched on before, but I don't know if my ideas for future meeting topics were, like a deep dive into Ondia Pro. I know maybe JP can even talk about like what he's been doing with that in terms of rising step mashes and what's working best for that. And then even guest speakers, like I feel like on the malting side of the house, we haven't really heard a lot from like Eckert on the rice malts or even grouse. I know that there was a really cool presentation that Peter and I both went to that was done at Ghostfish. It was called The Magic of Millet. And that was pretty fascinating, but it would be cool to have someone from one of those places on to talk about what they do and what what the future is for that kind of stuff, right? Especially that Ondia Pro was pretty cool. I was reading about that, and it was cool because it was talking about how it was made to use raw barley is the whole point of it, right? Instead of having to malt barley. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know if that relates to rice or millet, like using raw ingredients like that, or if that doesn't work.
I don't know if anyone knows. I'm thinking that Glutenberg here in Canada may actually be doing that because I don't think they're getting malted millet buckwheat from grouse. Is my guess. I don't know if anyone else knows that, but I'm kind of curious if there actually is a.
You think
one of
they're
the
using-
big-
I'm pretty sure they use a high efficiency system and use some raw grains for sure. I don't know if they use 100% raw grains. I know that they probably also use a fair amount of syrups.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
You're also using a
I've been
cereal
using
mat.
a lot of raw recently. I've used it up to 40%. I didn't get the same attenuation as I do with malted, but as you saw from some of those pictures that I've been posting recently, like the head retention's crazy.
Yeah, they look beautiful. Bob, what enzyme are you using with that? With those raw?
I'm still using
grain bills.
I'm still using Termamyl and Cvamyl primarily.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh,
Hey,
hey Brian! Wow, look at that.
Check.
It's high tech.
are you sitting in front of a green
Hey.
screen, Brian?
It does this on the app or something. It lets me pick out a match. I know.
He's doing face swap.
I feel like we should be having a music video or something with that.
Oh yeah, it's like a dance trip going on here.
My name is Brian.
I'll have to get out my turntable and my old DJ equipment now.
A little shameless self-promotion. That's the word I'm trying to say.
I like it. I like the plug.
So we have a couple of people that have.
So completely out of
Or
Some lag.
I'm getting some serious max headroom action on that.
yeah.
Like, I'm.
Oh, that's the effect I need. So how's everyone weathering the isolation and everything?
Well, I'm out in Seattle. It's I actually I risked it and I went to Home Depot this morning because I just couldn't stand it any longer. And then I was like, maybe I just made a big mistake. But there was nobody on the roads. It's just kind of weird. I'm usually kind of like a stay-at-home kind of guy anyway, so it's not too big of a deal. But after a while with the kids and everything, it's like it starts to get crazy.
Stir crazy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Washington has some of the best stay inside weather in the country.
It was gorgeous last week, though.
It was, yeah. It was really nice, yeah. And Brian, you're in Michigan, right? So how's things in Michigan? I heard that was kind of getting to be a hot spot.
Oh, it's corona-wise, it's fucking horrible. The hospital I work at, we've had to turn a waiting room into. They like cleared out all the chairs and put beds in the waiting room. We've got a 42-bed ER, and I'd say over half of them were corona cases. They're not confirmed yet, but they're, symptomatically they're likely corona. So we got to do the whole isolation procedures and wear the gown and the N95 with the surgical mask over it and goggles and a hair, cover your head and everything.
Dude. Oh my God.
It's definitely crazy. At first I was like, oh yeah, just another, pandemic. And then like once it really started coming in, it's like, holy fucking shit. Cause I've never seen this many people coming in at one time with breathing problems. And
yeah, that's nuts.
like even the worst flu we've had go around, they're like, you have maybe less than a quarter of the ER will be flu symptoms, and now it's like almost everybody. What? Yes, I got toilet paper. Oh my God, I found some.
What it's all about right
You're a
there.
wealthy man.
It is a zombie movie come to life.
Blue one.
Costco had it the other day. It was pretty awesome.
That I brought home.
Did you see the Costco one with the zombie sounds behind the people getting the toilet paper off the pallet?
Yeah.
It's funny. Every cart had a package of toilet paper in it, and plus everything else. But every single cart had one.
Lucky for me, I just ordered it from my company. We have 300 cases in stock at our warehouse.
Nice.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, the store wouldn't let me buy more than 2 gallons of water, spring water for brewing. I was like, God damn it.
Yeah, I just did that yesterday. I went to like 4 different grocery stores and CVS's and stuff and bought 2 gallons at a time to get enough water to brew because my water is so awful from the tap here.
Thirsty.
I'm having to go to like 3 stores to get enough eggs to make donuts, to sell to people.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys finding flour?
Flour's no problem. Bob's Red Mill is definitely hitting a lot of demand, but we buy wholesale from them, and with enough notice, we can get.
Speaking of that, JP, how's business with you have to close your tap room, so you getting a lot of people hitting you up for to-go orders and things like that?
Yeah, we are currently doing next day deliveries to Portland on Thursdays. We're doing next day deliveries to Salem, Albany, and Corvallis on Friday mornings. And then we're doing same day deliveries Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with donuts for delivery on Saturday and Sunday in Yamhill County. And we are very busy, very busy.
And then
Awesome.
You're gonna start 2-day delivery to Seattle here pretty soon.
And Vancouver, I cry every time I see your donuts posted.
Yeah. No, it's we sold 108 donuts yesterday.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And like 144 bottles of beer, I think is what the totals were. I mean, that's a lot for us.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Well, everyone's stuck at home with nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're stuck at home with your family? You drink more.
Self-defense.
What was that thing, Bob? Bob, you posted. It's like, I just went to the grocery store for the 3rd time this week to buy 2 weeks worth of
Yeah. I had fun sharing that one around. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I feel like too. Yeah. What else was I going to talk about? Competitions. I don't know if anyone's been entering competitions, but I know maybe this is a question for Stuart, because we had been going back and forth about lobbying the AHA to get a dedicated gluten-free category. I mean, I think everyone here knows that the category that most people submit beers into, unless you're doing a style-specific submission, is 31A alternative grains, which, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that people have to are using only gluten-free grains. It's basically like something alternative to the standard way to brew a beer, right? So I don't know. Stuart, I think you had written up something and I lazily didn't even read it.
That's all right.
But did you do anything with that, or what? I feel like
No, not yet. No, I mean, we can talk about that. I just thought I'd take that 31A category and rewrite it for more specifically gluten-free. But I took the approach. It was funny because I don't know why I was watching something where a bunch of you guys who were on the call today were talking about that category and approach, and whether we needed to drill down and have subcategories. And I just took the approach of let's get a foot in the door with one category. And I guess one thought was, do competitions maybe say, okay, for this particular comp, we're gonna narrow it down, do loggers, or something more specific, or just leave it open. Anyway, I'm happy to circulate that. It was just sort of a draft to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and I know that it causes a lot of heartache to me, I think, when I was doing the competitions where it doesn't really make it a level playing field, right? The other problem with it is, well, the problem if you just do one single category is there's a lot. I mean, if you're going lagers against IPAs and double IPAs, then it's kind of hard to judge one. You have all these different types of beers. It's hard to say, this one's better than this one and all that kind of stuff. But I think at least one category is better than none, right? So I think it's a good starting point, just to have a general category.
It'd definitely be an improvement just to have a general category. I know we've had a general category on the commercial side for quite a few years now. And what I notice, I mean, Beerly's yet to enter anything, mostly because we can't really satisfy the demand if we do place somehow. Bob, you might be in a similar situation there, but I've been paying very close attention to what kind of beers win, like GF, all the big competitions, and they tend to be memorable beers. Something that really catches you and lets you know. Bronze last year at GABF was Evasion's Grandpa's Nap. Many of us have had that. The winner was the bombastic hazy IPA. I had that last October when I was at Holidaily. It's fantastic and very memorable. Having entering a Pilsner, it's probably not going to go anywhere because you're not going to remember that beer when you taste it right next to something that's barrel aged or something that's got pumpkin in it or something that's, just really memorable. So
You got to go big beers or nothing at all, right? No light lagers, right? Not allowed.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Well, I
way it
think
looks
that-
on the commercial side, at least.
I think it's about memorability, right? I think JP really touched on a really important chord. I mean, in any sort of competition, like you're looking at a category where in order to win that category, you basically have to be best in show in terms of everybody else who shows up to the party. So, yeah, I mean, you could technically have a category that would like everybody submits a specific style of beer. That's one way to get a fair, like actual, like, but then when you look at it as a best in show competition, then you start to look at how you envision beers that you would enter into a competition like that differently. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. And I think both have a lot of merit. So yeah, that's an interesting thought, but I mean, I've had lagers that are quite memorable, so it's tough to really say.
What and JP, you were talking about were you talking about like Great American Beer Festival, or is that what you're referring to? What do you mean by like you have to ramp up? What if you win something? What does that mean? What were you talking about?
So, and Bob, you might be able to speak to this too. There's some cost. There's quite a bit of cost in entering those competitions from our perspective, and it ends up being a business expense basically, and so we need to have some payoff for it in some way. And being able to sell more beer and give and get more eyes basically on who we are as a brand is one payoff that a commercial brewery can look for. I know a couple of years ago, Alt Brewing in Madison won silver, or was it silver or gold with Copperhead, which I've had that beer. It's a great beer. And I know a couple people who called them up and tried to order it, and they said, I mean, we don't have it. It's not outside Wisconsin. There's no way we can get that to you. And given all the expense to get that beer to GABF to win all of that, it was a missed marketing opportunity. And so that's part of that's part of the calculus on the commercial side that homebrewers like really don't have to consider. To pivot back to what Bob said, I think that if it's one category, considering that it's a best in show category essentially is absolutely the right way to think about it. Is think about what beer am I going to submit that I think would win the best in show.
Yeah. And then wait, to JP's first point, which is the commercial production aspects, you only have to brew like 10 or 15 barrels of that GABF beer at all in order to submit it. So like, and all it has to do is be available for 1 month in your tap room. So there's some weird stipulations around it, but I think it's really smart that you see a lot of the larger brands like the Glutenbergs and the Groundbreakers submitting similar beers, or sometimes the same beer year over year, and just different iterations of that beer. Because then that's one way that you really know that, that is, a really good beer or a really good recipe, things like that.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, if you're gonna win something at GABF, right? Wouldn't you want to market that whole thing and try to sell more beer, right? I think that's what JB was talking about. Like,
it's smart to make it a flagship beer. Like, it would be smart for me to put, like, say, my IPA or my blonde into GABF, because if it even gets on the podium, like, that's an even better thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
for sure.
once
Be able
it
to
gets on the
capitalize
podium,
on all of the demand that you get out of nowhere and be able to actually supply it and actually make money on the recognition. Otherwise, it's like, oh, you win and everyone calls you for it, and then you can't give anyone the beer, and you kind of, cool. Where did you actually get out?
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to.
But you don't. Yeah, if you don't have distribution outside of your local market, then you can't fulfill those requests, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to, is distribution, right?
Right.
That's who usually wins the game. I mean, like, what is it? Like San Diego, for example, right? That's almost entirely owned by Stone Distribution. And it's not even that Stone's on tap everywhere. The beer brand, it's that Stone Distribution distributes all the beer in San Diego.
Right.
So like trying to get into a tap rotation is actually really hard because of the fact that there's gluten-reduced brands like Duckfoot and Stone, right? So you gotta either figure out how to get into Stone Distribution and they're selective, or you just like grassroots it. So yeah, no, I definitely know that game of demand for sure. It's been crazy because luckily we've had our contract brewer has the right license to be able to sell online, right? So we can sell to all of California, Arizona, and then we can even get up to like other states like Washington and other stuff like that now, which is great.
Wait, what? Where's that at? Come on.
Yeah, SoCal.beer. It's crazy. I was like, holy crap, that's lucky because we have a lot of restaurant accounts. Like I would say like about half of our accounts are restaurant accounts. And so it's just like crazy out here. Like all that beer that we were going to keg for Disney, like about 30 barrels worth of beer that we were going to put in half barrel kegs for Disney. I don't know when we're going to be selling to Disney again. So
Bob, are you pivoting now to are you going to be canning more?
Yeah, we just canned that whole 30 barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a really good batch. That blonde came out really good. We made some tweaks on the recipe, and I'm really happy. I haven't even tried it, but what I've been hearing from everybody that had, like, obviously in the canning run, you get a lot of rejects, like whether it's like an underfill or a broken can or whatever. And so they were trying those beers, and they were telling me it was really good. So last one, they were like, oh, yeah, blah, blah. It's all right. This one, they were like, whoa. So I'm like, okay, cool. If they're liking it and they brew barley, then that's a good sign.
Kind of back on the competition topic. I'm sure you all saw the post about the competition I'm throwing. I'm just asking for like 2 bottles for each entry that you're doing. One for for the head, and 2 for the efficiency. I still haven't exactly laid down all how I'm going to judge the efficiency. It's basically just on your honor. We'd like your grain bill, sort of your calculations, however you figured your efficiency. Brian from glutenfreehomebrewing.com will do I'll just have him verify the calculations for whoever wins. I think I'm going to use these glasses. I can get it in the camera for the head competition portion. I got it at the dollar store, so I can get a bunch and so I can have 10 lined up at once or whatever. Because if I sit there and do it, one at a time, it'll take me depending how many entries I end up with, could take forever. I'm basically just gonna, this is just pop, but same idea. Not a super clean pour, not a super dirty pour. Let it come up. I'll put a line so that I fill each one at the same level with the liquid, measure it, time it. It's mostly for fun, but and if you can float a bottle cap on top, that's even better. That might get bonus points or something.
So it's going to be the same pour. Are all the beers going to be served at a specific temperature? Because sometimes that affects how foamy.
Yeah, I've got a fridge downstairs. It's like my beer fridge, so I'm just going to try to set it for right around, I think 40, and then keep them all in there for at least 24 hours before I start pouring and measuring.
What? Hey, Brian, what's the dates and all that stuff about that again to refresh?
Okay, so now I got to think hard. August 1st is when I'm announcing, so I need all the beers into me 2 weeks before that, which I think I put down as July 18th. The cool thing is that social quarantining will not impact this because I'm doing all the judging stuff myself or at home. if I have to, if I can get together with a bunch of people to help do it.
Yeah, you're gonna drink them all too, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say this is
All in one night. So if you're the last one, you might just win because I'll be like, yeah, that's great.
This is a pretty good scheme to fill your fridge with a bunch of tasty beer.
Well, I'm hoping to be able to have some people helping me with this, so I can get other opinions, and especially on the tasting aspect. There's a homebrew shop that's got they're a brewery, direct gastropub, and they're actually interested in like carrying some gluten-free beer kits and stuff if I can develop something like that. So I'm sure they would, and they do like a homebrew meeting every month. So I'm kind of hoping I can, get in with them, or I know I can. It's just, I haven't talked to him yet, but he's always cool about shit. So I could just go there and do the whole, especially for the tasting aspect and all that, to try and get, as many people hopefully as needed. It's all really going to kind of depend on how many submissions I actually end up with. I mean, if I've only got 5, it's no big deal for me to do it. If I've got, 30 or 40 or 10 or 20 or whatever, it's going to be like, yeah, I need some help.
That's probably a good problem to have, though, right?
Oh, yeah, that would be a great problem to have. Well, and if I can do this at the local spot, I mean, I'm hooked into celiac gluten-free groups in Detroit, Michigan, and Ohio. So I can just publish that and be like, okay, everyone come to, Keto Straight Brew Pub on this date, and we're going to be doing this, and you get to taste free gluten-free beer. And they'll all show up. At least I'll get enough.
Yeah, so
that helps kind of to spread the word of, truly gluten-free beer.
Are you gonna have any people that have like BJCP like certified experience from a beer judging experience kind of side of the house, or just
the owners of the brew shop? I don't know if they're BJCP, but the one is definitely very proficient at tasting and looking for the BJCP type guidelines, out it's the taldehyde and all these words that I can't pronounce. Because I've had them taste a couple of my beers just as, to critique and guidance and stuff. So,
yeah, I
think it's definitely something I can look for. I'm not taking this like as a super serious, trying to keep it a little on the, that's why, setting the big parameters as head and efficiency kind of as a challenge, because those are, challenges in gluten-free, but I'm not meaning it to be, like the GABF where it's like super serious and,
right.
Trying to keep it kind of lighthearted, like the, great taste, less diarrhea. I mean, that's whole kind of, let's laugh at ourselves a little bit, keep it kind of fun and interesting. I'm going to take the tastings, as seriously as I usually do, but it's not like this is going to make or break anyone, or it'll be bragging rights. I'm working on, like some kind of a trophy type thing, maybe like a beer glass mounted on something with, the logo and the, like great head winner. I had the best head in 2020.
I like it.
Yeah, I think that like from my experience with like I'll just take like that Holiday competition, which was really cool. They put that on. I think what a lot of the home brewers want to get out of it is they want to get like good feedback first and foremost, and I would say the feedback from the Holiday competition was mixed at best, right? So I would encourage you, like, if you're like, if the one thing that you could do, like, other than taste the beers, and is just to write down everything and provide as much good feedback to people. Because if someone's like taking the time to send beers and there's a lot, and brew beers, and it's a lot of effort that's involved, and it would be unfortunate if they didn't get anything in return in terms of like feedback, in terms of
Right. Constructive criticism.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Shipping
And I
beer
can definitely
internationally is
find
kinda tough,
someone.
too.
I'll have to find someone who's, you know, not only skilled, but going to be kind of has the asshole streak to be like, yeah, your beer kind of tasted like this. Not that I would allow them to send it back in a mean way, but you know, sometimes it's hard to give a harsh critique when you know, like, oh man, this person put all this effort into it.
Right. I mean, anything like it's not even about that. It's like some of those judging sheets had like 1 or 2 words on it, right? So what I'm saying is like expound upon things, right? I don't know. It's tough if you're doing it by yourself, right? Where it's like, oh, or if there's a bunch of beers that you're judging to do all that, it's like, I don't know how those competitions are even set up, right? But
right,
a lot of the more well-run ones have judging forms where they fill it out completely, right? And then provide, even if it's hard to read the writing, they still try to provide some sort of constructive criticism or try to say, hey, this isn't within style or this or that, right? There's all sorts of nuances to it.
It's really important feedback to have.
You know, I can speak to that because I was obviously one of the judges at the Holiday competition. And it can be really hard. It can be really hard to offer feedback within a traditional competition setting because you're tasting all the beers against the other beers, and you have to like wrap your mind around it. So kind of like one suggestion for you, Brian, is maybe don't taste the beers in competition with each other, but taste the beers in order to give feedback. Do the visual inspection stuff to do the competition, and then maybe there could be some more like individual feedback for each of the beers.
Well said.
That's a good idea.
Yep. And if anyone has like an example, like critique or competition form or something that would just sort of help me have, like the talking points or the valuation points, that would be awesome. I'd love to have something I can print off, and then I've got that to go by.
Right, I imagine some of that stuff is available even if you're not using BJCP judges. You could probably go to bjcp.org. That's where you find some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Here you go. I'm putting it in chat right now.
Yeah, if you just Google BJCP forum, it's like the first thing that'll come up was a nice score sheet and
right there in chat. PDF.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, so that form is like really good for providing comments and typical descriptors that judges would use when doing a tasting or a competition for different beers.
Perfect. And I'll see if I can find someone local that's a BJCP judge. I know at least a few people that are in some of the different homebrew groups. Like they're not the clubs. It's got to be someone around that'll show up and help.
Oh yeah, there will be.
Yeah, it kind of brings me back to that magic of millet. I know Peter and I both went to it at Ghostfish. Gosh, it seems like it was like 10 years ago now. But it was really cool. They had someone from Lindsay Cornish from Grouse.
I'm not recording, but I'm on a...
And Evan Crane from WSU, who's a crop and soil sciences doctoral candidate. But part of that was they had steeped different millets in creating a tea. And then you did like the kind of drive-by, and then you tasted it. I have a hard time with categorizing these things that you see on that forum, like JP had put through. It's hard for me, like, to sit there. Like, there's like 2 modes, right? There's like, I'm drinking beer mode, and then I'm tasting beer for a competition mode. And sometimes it's really hard for me to transition to that beer judge mode, right? I'm like, oh, this tastes really good. Then I'm like, oh, I forget what this tastes like. It's caramely and hoppy, and
Gotta
it's
meditate between tasting.
yeah. And then if you drink like too many IPAs and you have a lager, it's like, oh man, those previous beers just blew my palate away, right? So it's like hard. It's hard to
This
have.
IPA tastes like nothing.
It's like water.
Right.
But it was pretty
Oh,
cool.
it tastes like American beer? What?
Yeah, it was pretty cool to have that presentation. I don't know, Peter, if you want to tell everyone your opinions of it. It was pretty fun.
It was pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, it was the guy from WSU, Evan, who's crop and soil sciences. It was fascinating because millet, like in places like Nebraska or whatever, or in the Front Range of Colorado, obviously where the malt houses are, is kind of a big business, right? But in Eastern Washington, where WSU is, it's all wheat. Everything is wheat or wheat, right? Because that's the cash crop out there, right? And but part of that whole program is to learn how to create these types of sustainable crops where you can use them in a rotation, and you're not going to have to just kill your land producing wheat all the time, right? And it was really fascinating to see, like, well, the reason why a lot of farmers don't do that out there is not because it doesn't grow out there, it's because there's nowhere to sell it, right? And so it's not really like it's more of a financial thing than a feasibility thing, right? And part of, I think, Ghostfish has been involved with investing in, as far as I know it, grouse malting, and investing in these programs at WSU, because if you think about how many producers of these grains are out there, I mean, if one of them shut down, we would not be brewing beer anymore. Right? So it's really
You're absolutely right.
to have that the ability to support those manufacturers, and also diversify the ability to produce those grains, right? And same aspect, like Ondia Pro, like it's able to use raw millet to brew beer, right? So I thought it was really fascinating.
Yeah, I thought it was cool how we
Look at its cost, right? I mean, even at the commercial scale, when you're buying bulk millet, it's $2 a pound. Barley producers are spending $25 a bag up front, a 50-pound bag.
Until we can figure out what to do.
So,
yeah, I thought it was neat too how they were talking about how, you know, obviously there's barley made specifically for brewing, and they're trying to figure out the best form of millet for brewing, and trying to, you know, look into, you know, ways of kind of cloning it or making it a fatter
breeding programs,
grain, so we can get more out of it. So
yeah, I mean, I brew with Rosso and white millet, and I get different gravities between the two.
Yeah. So they're looking at ways to, you know, get better yields out of that millet, and make it more of a beer brewing millet rather than a birdseed millet type idea.
Yeah.
I like it. That's really cool.
That would be a cool. That would be a cool future webinar or something for us to do if we could get speakers on that. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I have the contact information for Evan Crane, as who presented, and it's a lot of science, and so you have to be like probably not having like 3 or 4 beers while you're listening to it, right?
Hale's getting wasted.
Yeah. No, it's not even noon here, right? Is it 5 o'clock somewhere?
It's always 5 o'clock someplace.
That's right.
This is quarantine time, baby. It's 5 o'clock permanently.
That's right.
It's always time for a sake bomb.
So I see we had I see John from Virginia joined us. Hey, John. How's it going? How's things out at Bellevue Farms with the quarantine and all that stuff?
Well, we are pretty much shut down, save for some limited area delivery, and some curbside services. A challenge for us is we're very much a destination place. We're located on a farm outside town. And so it's not really a place you stop on your way home, to get a quick pint or a growler fill or whatever, or a gluten-free pizza for that matter, of which we have a really good one. But we're kind of just doing what we can right now. One silver lining that's kind of happened is that the state, like other states, has relaxed some of the licensure and regulations for who can and can't fill growlers. And so I think we're going to be able to get some more beer out into the community quicker as a result of that, for other places that are similarly just doing carry out or curbside kinds of stuff. So that's kind of what we're looking at diving into this coming week.
So it sounds like if there's nobody that can visit the winery and the brewery, it's kind of like business went way down, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking to try to make something out of this. And another bread and butter thing for the business is their wine club, part of which is done through the mail anyway. And so that will hopefully be enough, along with getting some kegs out to some trustworthy stores and restaurants in the area to help us.
Nice.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about some Ondia Pro stuff, maybe for JP specifically, because I know you're working a lot with it, and see what your thoughts would be on that. Have you ever used it on like a millet only beer, just to see what what the effects, if any, are on just millet?
The closest I came to that, I actually brewed my James Blonde this last week, which is 70% millet and 30% rice. And I have not adjusted any of my PPG numbers away from Twyla's numbers for the millet. So but I've adjusted to my rice numbers. So any efficiency in excess of 100% with that particular batch will be from increased efficiency from millet rather than from the rice. Is kind of what I'm figuring is going on. So 70% millet, 30% rice. I saw 110.4% efficiency with that batch on Monday.
And what did you have rice plugged in as for the PPG? Did you do 1029?
I use 1026 still for rice. I use 1026 and plan to get 100% efficiency is what I'm doing. And I use 1026 for all rices except crystal rice. I still use 1020 because it's a crystal malt.
Yeah.
So that's gonna leave more dextrins behind for the sweetness. So specifically to your question of what I've been messing around with specific millet beers, I don't have any beers that are just millet that I'm brewing right now, but I've been thinking a lot about what's the effect of Ondia Pro on millet.
Yeah.
And definitely the rice is a big deal. But there's more in millet too. There has to be, otherwise I wouldn't have seen
I just did a stout a couple weeks ago, and I had my rice plugged in at 1029.
Yeah.
And it came out, I only had about 2% of the grain bill was unmalted quinoa, and then like 2.5% was rice, and the rest was all various millets. And with 1029 for the rice and then 0 for the quinoa, I came out with 103.2% mash efficiency. And even if I go in there and plug in the quinoa like 1030, that only gives me an extra 2 gravity points, and I overshot by like 12 or 13 gravity points or something. So I was just looking at that like, wow, the millet I must have got a lot more out of the millet, because there's no way that gravity overshot that hard, putting 1029 for 2% of rice, and the quinoa did not contribute that much for sure. So To me, it seems like something's going on there with the millet. I don't know what, but
So the big thing with Ondia, to kind of go through the points that I have to share that haven't made it into a blog post yet, is that the attenuation issue. We've all been talking and thinking a lot about attenuation issue. We still, and I don't know if it's just, because I know, Bob, you're not seeing that. I know Brian from Gluten Free Home Brewing doesn't see it, but it's on a longer time scape. It ends up finishing and getting the yeast specific attenuation that's expected. We're still seeing it, and we've also we've completely switched techniques with how we maintain temperature and raise temperature in the brewery in the last 2 months. We're using indirect herms for raising the temperature now instead of a direct rims system. So we're not seeing, we're not sending the enzymes through something that would denature them. What we're doing that's starting to have a lot of success is considering whether or not the beer should have a high finishing gravity or have a lower finishing gravity. And then that's dictating one particular step of the mash regime. So follow me here. If it's something like a stout or a porter, the mash regime that Jason and I talked about in that blog post on Gluten Free Home Brewing, exactly that. Rising mash, nothing else, nothing different from that. It ends, for a stout, we're getting like 68% attenuation for a stout, which is beautiful. The head is beautiful. The body is there. I'm releasing a new stout in a couple weeks that I already have brewed. That's just absolutely gorgeous. And the ingredients for a stout are malted millet, malted rice, Fuggle hops, yeast, and water. It's the most amazing beer that I've ever brewed. And, there's 5 ingredients in it. It gets me like as close to a barley-based stout as I could ever have dreamed. And, it finishes at 1023 and 68% efficiency for that is perfect. It's got all the body. It's got all the head retention. On the other side, if I want to make an IPA, or I want to make, I'm using this with a Kolsch that I'm making right now, and so it'd also go for a lager or a pilsner. I do the same rising mash that is outlined, but then I reserve the first third of the runnings coming out of the mash tun. I set them aside. Lauter out, set that first third aside. So that's where that's the majority of the sugars that are coming out of that. Do the rest of the runnings into the boil kettle, and then pitch 1 milliliter per gallon of runnings of AG300 of a glucoamylase, just for that first third of reserved runnings. I treat that with glucoamylase for 30 minutes. And what I do while it's treating for 30 minutes is I ramp the rest of the runnings up in the boil kettle, get those to just at hot break so that they are at boil. And when that 30-minute timer goes off, turn the pump on, or if I'm doing a small batch, dump those runnings, the first runnings, directly into the boil kettle, which gets it up through the denature temperature of that glucoamylase right away. And I'm finishing Kolsch's, I'm finishing IPAs at like 1.011 or 1.012, which is like high 70s, low 80s for attenuation, which is the expected attenuation for those yeasts that I'm using. So that's kind of the new, that's what's going on new.
Yeah, it's weird that I've never had the under attenuation issue happen with any of my Ondia Pro beers. I mean, I'm in a cooler system doing starting high, going low, mash, and I mean the highest I've had one stop is 1014, and that was my stout. Oh, I would have liked that to stop maybe a little bit higher, get some more
You're pitching Termamil at the start, and then going down to what, 150, and
yeah. So I'm doing like 185 as a target. Anywhere between 180, 185 with the Termamil at 1.25 as my ratio, and then I'm adding about 2 quarts of water, like super cold water, bringing it down to 145, and then I'm doing the Ondia with the Sebamil L. And then finishing like that. So for an experiment, I did do a decoction because I wanted to try the rising temp. So I did 185 with Termamil, and then I did that for 30 minutes, and then I lowered it down to 145 with the Ondia, and then I decocted, raised it back up to 180, 185-ish. And let that rest. I had to run some errands, so I let that actually sit for 3 hours, and then came back. And when I came back, I said, you know what? I'm curious if the Sebamil L is doing anything. After 3 hours, I would assume full conversion would have already happened. So I dropped the temperature back down to 155, and then I added some Sebamil L for 30 minutes, and I gained 3 gravity points doing that. So not a whole lot. So I don't know what the Sebamil L maybe is.
But maybe it got some attenuation out of that.
Yeah,
might have broken down some of that.
Exactly. Maybe those 3 points
or
came from some of those, dextrins or something. I don't know how well Sebamil L chews that, but I just haven't had any of the attenuation issues. I actually was having attenuation issues doing my normal Termamil and Sebamil L, and then since Ondia, it's been fixed. So I'm like the opposite. What's happening? I'm liking it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really strange. Like we have tried. I've tried myself, and I've tried with Jason Yerger to do your specific falling mash regime exactly as you described it, Ben. We've used Jim Eckert's falling mash regime, and just can't duplicate it.
So weird.
And like the more that I brew and the more that I try to replicate other people's mashes, it's almost the one thing that you cannot replicate is results from a mash.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it's equipment specific too, right? Imagine, whether you're brewing in a igloo cooler versus.
Yeah, but I within the last I haven't talked a lot about this to everybody, but within the last 2 months, we basically changed our entire system for mashing. I now have a 2-barrel mash tun hot liquor tank stacking combo, and the 2-barrel is 36 inches wide, so I have very, very thin mashes, and that is completely different than my old 20-gallon mash tun, which was quite tall but narrow. And so that change in geometry, the change in going from a rim system to a Herm system, or even when we do falling mashes, we use no temperature control at all, just a Forloff at the end. None of those changes change the results of anything that we see. It could be water too, even with adjustment from water salts. It could be water. It could be pH. So who knows? I'm going to mute here for a second because I have a donut order coming in.
Hey, when do we get our donuts?
Yeah, we need some, man.
One of the things that I found with the falling mash that seems to work really well is a lot of times it's based on the grain, right? So especially grains that are really high in amylopectin, corn and rice specifically. I see it working incredibly effectively. Like with our blonde, we use millet, rice, and corn in it. So we've actually started mashing in the corn and the rice at like 205, and then the temperature doesn't fall as precipitously as it does at the homebrew scale, right? So those grains are actually cooking as well, because it takes a while to go from that like 205 to like 185, where millet is ideal at being mashed in at. But I think that it really helps get that taste the right place, especially because when you use an ingredient like a corn, raw corn in my opinion, doesn't taste as good as cooked corn. And so I think that and when you're looking at specific grains and you're trying to go after specific tastes with them, I think that could be a really smart idea as well. And then you look at, say, more of the grains that are going to have some of the higher tannins, like maybe some of the roasted malts. Those might also be an interesting idea to say, like, try a mash where you do them all at once at one high temperature, and then try a mash where you steadily add them, and maybe you add the darker malts when it's at a lower temperature, and seeing if you get a different taste or a better taste out of that.
Hey, what did I miss?
Yeah.
Bob just gave us all the
ordered a case of-
secrets.
Yeah, I was talking about
well.
different grains, and like especially like high amylopectin grains. Some of them need to be like cooked, I would say, like rice or corn.
Yeah,
And
we've
so-
definitely seen that with the rice. We're pre-cooking rice now. I know you and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
And that actually, it can change results. It can change beers by doing that, even when you do it on a beer that you've been making the same way all the time, and then suddenly you cook the rice and you can tell the difference.
What do you mean by that?
You're just
JP,
doing
that
it-
you're cooking the rice, pre-cooking the
You're
rice.
doing a
and you're
cereal
making-
mash first with no enzyme.
Not a cereal mash. Taking the rice, basically getting some boiling water, taking the rice and mashing in with just the rice. I'm doing 2 liters per approximately 2 quarts per gallon of rice, 2 quarts per pound of rice. Sorry. The rice is right. 2 quarts per gallon of rice, right? 2 quarts per pound of rice. And it absorbs it all. The rice absorbs all of that. And you basically just pour in boiling water until you get some kind of fall in viscosity. I let that sit for 15 minutes and then dump it in the mash tun and dump the millet in and put the rest of the hot liquor in, the strike water into the mash tun.
Okay,
And
so
then-
let
and
me
then
get
your
this straight.
enzyme.
You've milled the rice, you then cook it in 2 quarts per pound of water, and then you dump that all into your mash tun, and then add everything else. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's essentially, if you've ever used a grist case, it's similar to that, except for you're hydrating with boiling water.
Yep.
Nice.
I will say this for the Ondia, though. I think everyone kind of is in agreement of this, but just like the head and the body that is coming out.
Oh,
of
man,
it.
yeah.
Using a recipe that I've been doing forever and then just basically adding the Ondia at my Sebamil stage and doing nothing else different is just like, wow. Especially trying to make, like, I made like a Kolsch that was pretty much a tiny bit of buckwheat in there, but it was pretty much just all rice. And then, to have a body on an all rice beer basically like that is just like, I'm like, next time around, I'm like, I'm just going to cut out, almost all of that buckwheat. I don't even think I need it. It was almost too chewy. It's like, geez.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
We've made all rice lagers that are basically Jim Eckert's secret recipe that's not a secret, which is equal parts naked, pale rice and whole biscuit rice, and then a couple pounds of some kind of character grain, whatever you want. And then because I want something like a lager, I'm using some kind of noble hop and getting about 20 IBUs with that, and making beers that do not taste like rice beer, that have a head, that have a body, that don't have that celery seed taste to them that sometimes rice beers with a high percentage of rice have. It's amazing.
So JP, are you crediting that lack of that celery seed to the Ondia, or what else do you think is on there?
Yeah, fully converted, like breaking up that Bob amylopectin, right? Is what we've been kind of attributing that to.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, also the taste in terms of the huskiness. I've entered beers that have high rice content into BJCP contests, and people are like, oh yeah, did you use 6-row on this because it tastes really husky or whatever? And you're like, oh, interesting. I used a lot of husked rice, and then you do that same recipe with half the husk, or even or even like more naked, like up to like 60% naked, and you watch that huskiness kind of disappear a little bit.
Come here. Come here.
So yeah, I don't know if that's, well, we actually did that with our IPA recipe, because we already use a fair amount of rice hulls just in case. So we started using a lot more dehusked rice in there, and just in general. I don't know. Has anybody else on the homebrew scale been working with the naked stuff, or is it just the cost point's not worth it? Because at the bulk scale, the cost isn't as much of an issue because it is still a little bit
like buying the naked gas hog while they had it in stock.
Yeah.
I think it's a special order, but getting that without the astringency from the husks, I
Yeah.
thought was huge for like a stout, but they don't seem to, stock it regularly.
Peter and I did that. I've still got some, and I think it's worth it. Have you used any?
No.
I just ran out of it. Now I'm like, frustrated because I can't re-up on it, so maybe we'll have to talk to Brian and see if he's able to get another, stock of it in. Because I know
maybe if there's enough of us,
I've got
want to do it.
35 pounds in McMinnville of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to brew a porter next weekend, so I'll probably throw some in.
Toilet paper and gas hog, right?
That's right. He's stockpiling.
Yeah.
Don't forget the donuts.
Have you all tried the two malts that are new? One malt that's new and one malt that is available some places, from Grausen and Eckert.
Like
Caramel. So Caramel 240 is amazing. That's the color in my stout. Hey Felix, could you stop please?
I just used my stout as well.
Yeah, it is all the color with none of the astringency, and you do not have to use a lot of it to get the result.
That's great.
And then the other thing that we're using is Jim Eckert is doing a dark roast biscuit now, and it gives this really nice umami flavor, like almost salty. That just it's not buckwheat. So the buckwheat flavor that you just say, oh, that's buckwheat. It's not that flavor, but it's more than rice. It's more than millet. It's something just really nice and
oh, that's
chewy.
cool. I imagine we don't have that yet through
so.
Brian.
Yeah,
it might be a special order.
Yeah, secret stash.
JP's got all the hookups.
I know that's one that I actually have Jim custom roast for me, because I tried it a couple years ago and liked it so much that I have to, I buy it 5 to 7 bags at a time, something like that. That's his minimum order for something.
So that's not the James Brown roast.
No, it's the biscuit. It's the biscuit roast, but he'll roast it to a darker color. He's got medium biscuit and dark biscuit, and dark biscuit is where it's at.
Yeah,
cool.
I love the biscuit in general, man. So I'd be curious to see what something a little darker like that would give you.
Yeah.
I feel like you get a lot of barley maltiness flavor from that biscuit. Subbing out some of the pale for that really goes a long way, I think.
Yep.
Cool.
So what else we got? I was thinking about, we had talked about a party, right? Like right now that that doesn't sound very fun, right? But I don't know. I mean, there's a possibility we could do something in the summertime at Ghost Fish. I know that might not work for a lot of you people, right? But is anyone interested in trying to coordinate something like that for later on this year?
I'm due for some beer tourism, so
okay.
I'm ready to come up. Yeah, let's do it.
That'd be fun.
All right.
Yeah, I'd be up for that.
We'll do a bar hop. We'll go from Cold Crash to Ghost Fish, and then we'll go across the street to the whiskey bar.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're supposed to start at the whiskey bar, Bob. Come on.
When is Jason?
Well, no, I don't want to be too drunk to taste the beer.
Jason's supposed to be up and running pretty soon too, right? We'll have another over there, and hopefully, if he gets stocked up, we can taste some beers from like all over the country and stuff. That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be fun. Do a flight.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually try like 4 different blondes, all from different breweries. At the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah.
Yeah,
What
that'd
a
be great.
rare chance. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Right. Dude, I can't wait till they have that like a BJ's, but like gluten free, where you have like 28 gluten free beers on tap. That'd be nuts. Let's do it. Let's do it.
We only had that one time. It was the first anniversary party, and that was great.
Yep. And I think about 10 beers in, I had already had palate fatigue. I was like, I'm like, I can't taste this beer anymore.
Especially after the grandpa's nap, that was like over the top flavor.
Yeah, keep us posted, Kale. I guess work on that. I guess we'll just keep an eye on when this whole thing starts to blow over and figure out when we can get a date going and try to get a big heads up so we can try to. I wish we knew like when it was going to end. If we said, "Oh, we can do it in like August," and we can all buy $30 plane tickets up there right now, that would be pretty much of a gamble, right?
Yeah, just not August 1st.
Yeah,
because that's the
that's your home brew day
at Rolling Mills.
Yeah.
Well, Stuart and I can take the train down, so we won't have to drive drunk.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
make a weekend out of it.
Nice. Well, we had that first party, and I feel like there should be something to get everyone together as much as possible, right? So that's definitely a fun thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
So, what else did I have? I had one like thing that I wrote up, right? And this is kind of super sappy, right? But I feel like we haven't really talked about our buddy Joe, who started this whole club, right? So, and I know he's not on the call, right? But I feel like for this meeting, something should be said for what he created, right? I mean, I've kind of inherited, I guess, like being an admin for the group, and I'm not sure if I have enough time to put all the effort in that he did, right? But there was a lot of effort, and I feel like something should be said about what he created here, bringing us all together, right? So, so anyways, here goes. So I'm gonna just give you my little spiel, okay? So
need tissues.
So I'm going to tell you like about my journey, right? So when I was diagnosed with celiac disease in 2016, right at the start of 2016, right? And so I'd never brewed beer ever before that. Not like something like someone like Joe or who had a lot of barley brewing experience. Never brewed beer, never cared to brew beer. Just went to the grocery store, get my beer, go home and drink it, right? Then all of a sudden I got diagnosed and I go to the grocery store. What do I see? I see ghost fish and omission, right? And even for a lot of people, that is that's way more than most people have, right? So if you go to other parts of the country, other parts of the world, all you're going to get is some sort of gluten reduced beer that probably going to make you sick if you're celiac like me, right? So once I got diagnosed, I had a neighbor that actually brewed extract barley beers, right? And it got me thinking one day. I was like, well, there's ghost fish. My neighbor brews beer. Boom. Put those two together. I was like, maybe I could brew my own beer, right? That'd be awesome. So fast forward to me researching every single thread. I found Homebrew Talk. I don't know if you guys go to Homebrew Talk at all, right?
Same way I did it.
Homebrew Talk has a gluten-free forum, so I proceeded to read every different thread on that forum, some of which is very old school, right? Some old school stuff is going on there. And then I found gluten-free homebrewing at the time.org, right? Which has now since changed to homebrewing, glutenfreehomebrewing.com. And I was like, wow, I'm going to order up all the ingredients to do the Ghost Fish Grapefruit IPA, right? Because at the time, I don't know if they have it on the website anymore. They used to have a blog post with the recipe for the grapefruit.
It's like Jason's little homebrew blog that was on there in the early.
Yeah, which it's funny
Right.
because you see that if you went back in the day, it was like, oh, we're gonna put all this stuff on there, and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're really fucking busy now. We're not gonna post on here anymore. So, anyways, that was December 23rd, 2017 is when I did that. That's my first brew I ever brewed, and almost exactly a month later was a post that Joe posted up on Homebrew Talk in the Gluten Free Forum, which was announcing the Zero Tolerance Gluten Free Homebrew Club, right? So when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, that's awesome, right? I'm going to join that. And from there, it was, I don't really even go onto that Homebrew Talk forum anymore because there's so much going on within our Facebook page and so much interaction that you can't really get from a forum like that, that there's really no need for me to do that, right? And I just wanted to say for Joe, for me personally, like Joe creating this club was an impact because that profoundly impacted me because it created a forum where we can all get together, even if it's virtual, right, and talk about this thing that we love to do that not many of us actually do. It's kind of a niche kind of thing, right? So, you go to the homebrew store and I see they have sorghum syrup there, but they don't have any gluten-free malts there, right? It's all barley, wheat, all that kind of stuff, right? And I feel like this group has created a community that's very active. There's a lot of people that post on the Facebook page, and a lot of that would be an isolated situation where we wouldn't be able to get together and have these kind of conversations that we do now. So I feel like we owe a debt of gratitude to Joe, and maybe you'll see this on YouTube or whatnot, but I think we should all give a cheers and a thanks to Joe Morris for creating this club, even though my beer is empty.
Yeah. Cheers, Joe. Wish you were here, bud.
Yeah, cheers to Joe.
My empty.
Here. Everybody get a fresh beer.
I already had 3. I gotta slow down. It's only noon.
Yeah, it is only noon.
Stay young.
So anyways, that was all I had. Unless anyone else has any other topics they want to talk about. I know it's still sunny out. It's the afternoon. So anyone else got anything else they want to talk about?
Well, it was funny to me, like in the months leading up to this, I had brewed a fair amount of home brews and hadn't really had a chance to drink a lot of them. And now I'm like running out of beer. So I'm having the entirely opposite problem than I had before. So, I mean, like the brew fridge is almost empty. I could almost lift it at this point. It's crazy. So I'm like brewing. I was supposed to brew yesterday. I didn't. So I'm going to try to brew today and probably brew tomorrow. And I probably have enough tanks to probably do the day after that. So it's like, I'm literally like, I've got like a stockpile of hops that I still have from last year from HomebrewCon. Like, it's just crazy to go, oh wow, were we like already prepared for this somehow by being gluten free? Like, you don't really go out that much anyways when you're gluten free. So like, Dominique already has like 3 different 25-pound sacks of flour, right? I harvested some sourdough yeast from the air. It's like you're like, wait, are we strangely like almost ready for something like this? This is weird.
Anybody need any Citra hops?
Wow. Dang, nice.
I still have 8 ounces that I haven't used of Citra. I'm like, yeah, I have too much stockpile.
I was on a delivery yesterday because that's what I do now on Saturdays and Sundays is I deliver.
Nice.
And it was to a regular customer here in McMinnville. And he's an accountant, and we were just talking, and then I said, you know, what is going on with 2020? I can't believe that we're in 2020 now, and we're all sitting around at our house quarantined, and this is what the future is, right? And he looked at me and he's like, yeah, this is the future. You just delivered gluten-free beer and gluten-free donuts to my house. This is awesome.
Right? Nerds wake up in a utopia. Sports are canceled and no one wants to go outside. Right?
And Star Trek is on the air, right? New episodes.
Yeah, Picard.
I bought a PS4 over this. I literally hadn't played video games in like 10 years.
Wow.
You have something to do.
Right? It's crazy.
Should have got a trampoline, Bob. Should have got a trampoline.
We should get some exercise with the trampoline.
That's what Felix is doing right now. He's jumping between the couch and the trampoline right next to me. So something that I want to start putting out there that we don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of shape to yet, but you know, if you want to message me about it, talk to me more about it, that's fine. I'm having a little bit of a hard time keeping up with production as it is, and deliveries and business and all that stuff. So Beerly's thinking maybe about getting a part-time assistant brewer to help out. And, you know, probably being local is probably an advantage with most things. But yeah, I can't believe it come at this time, but that's what we're looking at right now, kind of what we're trying to get some shape to.
Cool.
That's great. Do you guys have enough space in your current brewery to, are you filling up your space with tanks? Do you have much space left in there?
We don't have that much space, but let me tell you, not having customers in once a week right now, or 3 days a week, sure gives us a heck of a lot more space to stick stuff that you know, takes that customer space. So yeah.
Cool, man.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for putting this together, Kale. It was good to get everyone back togetger here and get some updates.
So if we're still under quarantine, I'm probably going to do it again next month. So look for an invite for the next one, and then next time I'm going to work my best to get a guest speaker that can go through you know, some sort of topic that's interesting to us. So
hey, I had an idea too, since we're under quarantine. Is anybody interested in like a brewing live stream? If I were to set up my computer so that it faced the brew deck at Beerly, and just have it on for, you know, the 10-hour brew day, and anybody could get on or get off and see what's going on and ask questions or whatever, that could relieve some boredom.
Cool.
Would anybody be interested in that?
Yeah,
I'd
for
probably
sure.
log on a few times.
Fun idea.
See how it's going.
We can all brew along together.
yeah, we can place bets to see what your ending gravity is going to be too.
Yeah.
You're taking wagers.
There'll be a lot of pressure on to perform.
Watch, he like acts like he added enzymes and then doesn't.
Well, you can see how many times I like walk around, because I swear I walk like 10 miles in a day when I'm brewing, you know.
True. It's just pacing back and forth, a bunch of that.
The last time I brewed, I dislocated my knee. Nobody wanted to see that.
Dang.
Or do we?
Yeah, well, no, you don't. It was nasty.
Right?
You could see I wasn't carrying my mash tun to settle, that's for sure.
You had like a swollen foot too, right? Back like a while back.
Yeah, still don't know what that was, but that was painful. I was in Mexico on holidays. It was just depressing as hell.
Dude, that's
Now,
nuts.
to be honest, I haven't brewed for 3 months because I've got some liver issues. They told me not to drink. So I don't know what's going on there. So I'm kind of in a spot where I'm not sure.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, be safe
I
out
think
there.
I have an alcoholic's liver, but I only drink 2 beers a week. So I don't know what it is.
Wow. Could be something else. Not gluten.
Yeah, well, they said a lot of the things I have going on are because of the celiac undiagnosis for so many years. Did a lot of damage to certain organs and stuff. So we'll see.
Have you been tested to see if you're fermenting stuff in your gut?
No,
a
but
thing.
somebody did bring that up to me before as well. So that's
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to bring that up.
Yeah, low FODMAP or whatever is usually the best recommendation I can give to anybody at all, is that whole like low FODMAP diet.
Mm. Yeah.
Also, just like I know for myself, like if I have too much sugar, like I don't know what it is. Like I don't even have to drink. I get a hangover from sugar.
Yeah. Well, that's
So I
the
think I
other
have
thing.
a
They just
similar
said my sugar levels now diabetic rather than pre-diabetic. So
Yeah.
lots of weird.
Diabetes.
Yeah. Anyway.
There you go, man. Be safe out there, everybody.
All right. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for everyone for
Yeah.
joining, and we will see you next time. And have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, y'all.
Likewise, guys.
There's a lot of
Take
beer.
Thanks, Kale.
Yeah.
Be safe,
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
You guys.
Y'all.
Bye.
Bye.